This boy literally possesses a kingdom filled with monsters from the strongest possible class. However, because he hasn't activated this kingdom and the monsters appear weak, his entire family believes he's a failure and completely useless. The activation conditions weren't that difficult. He simply needed to sell his monsters to anyone, and once he did, his true power would be revealed to everyone. Because of that, he made a firm decision to open his own shop and start selling his monsters so his power could finally manifest. Everything begins with us following Fong as he's cleaning his monster shop. Suddenly, two people burst in, knocking over the sign outside. Fong gets annoyed and says, "Why did you do that? You scare my monsters." The boy there mocks him, saying, "Your monsters? These are just trash to me. I don't even understand how you see them as anything important." The girl with him, whose name is Shio, also speaks up, saying, "Looks like you forgot. You were just kicked out of the family a little while ago." Fong denies it and tries to convince them that all his monsters are actually S-rank. The boy, named Robin, gets angry and says, "You must be insane. S-rank monsters are extremely rare. In the past 30 years, only one S-rank monster has ever appeared." Shio cuts in and says, "Anyway, we're here now just to inform you that you need to shut down this shop within 3 days because you've been expelled from the family. If you don't close it, family will send people to shut it down by force." After delivering the message, the two leave. We then learn that Fong was expelled from the family long ago. The family leader had shouted at him harshly because the family is known for raising powerful monsters, and he was the only exception since all his monsters appeared weak. But in reality, that's not the case. All the monsters Fong owns come from the legendary monster kingdom, and the weakest among them is at least S-rank. The problem is that for their abilities to manifest, he has to sell them all to beginners. This made things difficult for Fong. Despite being S-rank, everyone sees them as weak monsters on the surface. Fang's only wish is to sell even a single one of them, because once he does, he'll become a genius monster tamer. At that moment, his thoughts are interrupted when a girl enters the shop. Fong welcomes her. She begins looking at the monsters and says, "Unfortunately, these monsters are very outdated and completely useless." The guard accompanying her says, "I thought the monsters in this shop would be good, but sadly, that's not the case." The girl responds, "I just wish I had an S-rank monster so I could do whatever I want within my family instead of being used like this." At that moment, another guard who was with him enters and apologizes, saying, "I searched every shop and I couldn't find a single S-rank monster." One of the guards tells the girl that if she doesn't win the upcoming competition, her family will force her to marry someone from another family, form an alliance. The girl becomes very upset and says, "When will I ever find an S-rank monster?" Fong steps in and says, "Why are you making it so complicated? All the monsters in this shop are at least S-rank." Naturally, the girl doesn't believe him. She shouts at him and warns him not to lie. Fong reassures her, saying, "Don't worry, my shop's trustworthy. I'll even compensate you 10,000 if the monster isn't S-rank." She replies, "But I know these monsters well. They're completely ordinary." Fong thinks for a moment and admits to himself that she's right. The types of monsters in his shop were actually pulled from the market because they were considered too. Still, he insists that his monsters are different from any others. She says, "All right then, show me one." He brings out a cat and says, "Let's not talk too much. See for yourself." Seeing how confident Fong is, the girl decides to form a temporary contract with the cat. With a movement of her hand, energy flows out of her as she touches the cat, and the contract is instantly completed. The moment the contract is formed, the girl is shocked. She discovers that the cat is actually the legendary 9 Lives cat, which grows stronger every time it dies. She becomes overjoyed. What's happening is insane. Out of excitement, she slams the desk so hard that it breaks. She's confused because Fong looks completely ordinary, yet she concludes that he must be a hidden legendary tamer. She then gives him 10 million and says, "I'll take the cat." But Fong apologizes and says, "It only costs 5 million. I don't have change right now." She replies, "I don't want any change. Take all the money. This monster is worth far more than." At that moment, the guards are unconvinced. They say, "Be careful. This merchant is clearly tricking us." The other guard even tells her to leave the monster behind so they don't bring shame to their family. The girl becomes furious. When the guard try to take the monster from her by force, she explodes with power, sending them flying into the wall. She shouts, "Are you insane? Have you forgotten who you're dealing with? How dare you touch my monster?" The injured guards are shocked by her strength, as it truly seems like S-rank power. In the end, Fong bids farewell to the customers. The girl is extremely happy and tells him, "I promise I'll send everyone I know to you because you're literally selling treasures." Since Fong has now sold his first monster, a system appears before him and says, "Congratulations on completing your first task. You have now obtained a legendary monster of SSS rank." Fong is stunned. He touches the monster monster and realizes it is Chu Xian, one of the 10 ancient monsters, whose power is supposed to be terrifying. At that moment, a powerful energy emerges from Chu Xian and flows in Feng's body. Feng stands there, laughing, and says, "Now I've finally become an expert." The system gives him another piece of information. The more monsters you sell, the more rewards you will receive, including evolution resources. This message is unbelievable to Feng, because evolution resources are normally extremely difficult to obtain. But if he keeps selling monsters, he'll be able to acquire them easily. At that moment, the scene then shifts to the girl, who heads to the combat arena to train as the Monster Tamers competition is approaching. She watches an intense battle unfolding before her and says, "I've dreamed for so long of just being able to enter this place." When the fight in the arena ends, the owner of the spider stands there confident, while his opponent is crying and begging for mercy, pleading not to be killed. The winner laughs and addresses the crowd, saying, "Who would dare challenge me?" One of the spectators, clearly frightened, says, "That spider belonging to Master Xie is literally terrifying. It's considered one of the best in A rank." Others around them mention that the spider is worth around 1 million. At that moment, the girl decides to challenge. She summons her cat and says, "Let's see if this cat can defeat that spider or not." She steps into the arena with her cat, which begins to move as its body glows with a dazzling light. On the other side, the spider becomes enraged. It moves at incredible speed, slamming its leg into the ground, cracking it, as if issuing a threat to the girl. Xie then speaks, saying, "Before I do anything to you, you can beg me for mercy. I might spare you a little." The girl looks at the spider, clearly tense, as its appearance is truly terrifying. But unlike her, the cat steps forward confident, completely unafraid. The moment it activates its massive aura, the spider becomes terrified and tries to flee, but the aura crashes down on it, crushing it completely. The spider attempts to shoot its webs, but it's all useless. The aura strikes it again, sending it crashing violently into the ground multiple times. Xie is stunned, unable to believe what just happened to his spider in just seconds. The battle ends. After some time, we move to Xiao's room, where it's mentioned that the Xie family is a major client, and they must always be treated with care. Robin informs her that Xie is outside and wants to purchase a product. After getting permission, he goes out and asks, "What would you like to buy?" Xie replies, "Unfortunately, my spider was defeated in a fight against cat. The doctor told me that for it to recover, it needs something called a water frog." Robin asks if they have that item, but then scoffs and says, "Your request is too low level. We definitely don't have something." After thinking for a moment, he suddenly laughs and says, "Wait, I just remembered someone who might have it." Of course, he's referring to Feng. At that moment, Feng is sitting in his shop, wondering whether he'll get any more customers today. While he's thinking, Robin walks in with Xie. Feng is surprised and asks, "What are you doing here?" Robin replies simply, "My friend needs a water frog. You have one." Feng brings out the frog and shows it to Xie, asking if this is what he wants. Xie confirms that it is and asks for the price. Feng points to the price, 5 million. Robin immediately gets furious and says, "How can anyone buy this trash for 5 million? Feng calmly insists that his monsters are powerful, not weak at all. Xie cuts in and says, "That's absurd. Even mutated frogs only cost around 200,000. Feng smirks and says, "I heard that Xie doesn't care about money, so why are you complaining?" Robin steps forward angrily and says, "Watch yourself. You're talking to someone from the Xie family. The family relies on him heavily. If you keep being stubborn, it could cause serious problems between our families." Feng responds coldly, "I don't care. Looks like you forgot. I was kicked out of that trash family anyway." At that moment, Xie interrupts them and says, "Fine, I have plenty of money, but I need proof that this frog is worth 5 million. Feng assures him that he's telling the truth, but Xie shakes his head and says, "Words don't matter. I need proof right now." Then he summons his terrifying spider inside the shop. Robin starts laughing and says to Feng, "All right then, now you're going to die for angering Xie." At that moment, the spider lunges forward at incredible speed to attack. The spider lunges toward the frog, but at the same time, a powerful aura erupts from the frog. A golden beam bursts out and strikes the spider repeatedly, forcing it to crash to the ground. Xie is completely stunned. He can't understand how something like this could happen to his A-rank spider. He quickly realizes that the frog is most likely S-rank. Robin immediately protests, saying, "Impossible. That spider was already injured, and besides, the monsters that Kid Fong has are trash, like we already know. Fong is now completely fed up with the insults. He says, "You're ruining my shop's reputation. All of my monsters are S-rank." Xie steps in and says, "That's very hard to believe." Then he takes out his phone and sends a message to his sister, Bing. He tells her that she is an expert in monster evaluation, and if there's any trick going on, she'll expose it immediately. We then shift to Bing herself. She is sitting in a laboratory, visibly bored, saying, "It's been a long time since I've seen a monster interesting enough." She receives her brother's message and sees the frog image. She says, "Looks like my brother is just bored and messing around." Still, she decides to examine it, thinking she has nothing to lose. She activates her skill, and strange circular patterns appear in her eyes. Through this ability, she evaluates the frog, and she is shocked to discover that it is indeed S-rank. She immediately tells her brother, "Don't hesitate. Buy that frog no matter the price." In her excitement, she even knocks her tea over onto the ground. Xie is shocked and says, "But Robin told me not to buy it, that it's trash." However, Bing insists again and tells him to buy it immediately and not let anyone stop him. She even advises him to treat the merchant, Fong, with great respect. Xie realizes from her reaction that the frog must truly be powerful. At that moment, Fong becomes impatient and says, "If you're not going to buy it, leave. Don't waste my time." Xie immediately puts down his card and says, "No, I'll buy it." Robin tries to stop him, but Xie insists. Even Bing, speaking through him, politely greets Fong and says, "How about we become friends from now on?" Fong is happy with the respectful attitude, thanks him. Robin continues shouting, warning him that Fong is deceiving them. But Xie replies, "How can a genius from our family like Fong be wrong about this?" Xie then completes the purchase. After that, Bing leaves, thinking to herself, "My sister is very smart when it comes to relationships. If she told me to treat Fong well, then he must be an important person." We return to Fong, who finishes another sale. The system congratulates him again, saying he has completed another transaction and received evolution resources. Chu Xian begins evolving further, with a magical circle appearing beneath Fong. Golden chains wrap around him as his power continues to grow. Meanwhile, Bing examines the frog in her lab and confirms again it is S-rank. Xie asks, "So it's really special?" And she replies, "Yes." "How much did you buy it for?" When he tells her the price, she is shocked and says, "That's the price of a normal A-rank mod." She then calms down and concludes that the price is probably low because Fong already has many S-rank. When she asks whether the shop has more monsters, Xie confirms. Bing immediately runs out, not wasting a single second. Xie tries to follow her, but he hears her scream and discovers she fell down the stairs out of excitement. She quickly gets up without explaining anything and runs again toward the shop. Soon after, she arrives at Feng's shop, where Fong is standing with several customers. The girls there mentioned that Jiang Roxy, the one who took the cat early, recommended this shop. Fong welcomes them and brings out a snake, placing it in front of them while stating its price. One girl immediately pays without hesitation, but her friend becomes nervous and says, "We should at least examine it first before paying much." At that moment, Bing activates her eye ability again from behind them and evaluates the snake. She confirms it is S-rank as well, and thinks to herself that it might even belong to a rare lineage. She immediately decides she must get it. She steps forward quickly and says, "I want this snake." The girls recognize her and say she is Bing, a well-known researcher in monster study, and are surprised she wants such a monster. Fong responds, "Sorry, but someone else was going to buy it first. However, if they refuse, I can give it." The girl refuses to give it up. Meanwhile, Bing becomes more and more shocked, realizing Fong might have multiple S-rankers. She immediately calls her master. We then shift to the master himself, sitting in his office, looking very stressed. He thinks about how battles have become more difficult and casualties among monsters are increasing. He says that no matter how many strong monsters are sent to research centers, it won't be enough unless they are S-rank. While he is working, he receives Bing's call. She tells him, "I found a shop filled with S-rankers." The master is shocked and asks, "Are you serious?" She replies, "I saw them with my own eyes." He immediately stands up and says, "Take me there right now." Meanwhile, Fong completes the third monster sale. The system rewards him again with evolution resources and also grants him a daily chance to hunt 2 monsters per day. Fong is very happy. This is the first time he'll actually be able to hunt monsters, since his S-rank stock is almost finished. He then tells Bing, "I'm sorry, but I need to close the shop." However, Bing grabs his clothes and says, "Wait, my My master wants to come see it himself. Feng agrees and says, no problem. To build anticipation, Bing tells him, my master is Xie Chong, the director of the Research Institute, responsible for training monsters before they are sent to fronts. Soon after, Xie Chong finally arrives with his guards. A large number of guards arrive, and Xie Chong heads straight to the shop. When Bing sees him, she greets him and introduces Feng, saying, this boy has already sold 3 S-rank monsters so far. Xie Chong shakes hands with Feng and immediately says, show me the S-rank monsters you have right. Feng replies, unfortunately, I don't have any at the moment. Xie Chong asks if he can obtain more monsters, assuring him he is willing to pay 10 times the market price. Bing is shocked by the number and asks Xie Chong why he is willing to go that far. Xie Chong replies, all of this is for the country. The coming danger is not simple at all, and humanity is now depending on the S-rank monsters that Feng can provide us. Feng then responds, so what exactly are you going to do with all the monsters you buy? The guards immediately get angry and step in, saying, how dare you speak like that? They begin threatening Feng harshly. However, Xie Chong simply laughs and says, what a strange question. Feng explains, if I know the purpose, my efficiency and speed in hunting monsters will increase. If it's important, I'll work even harder and hunt them as fast as possible. Xie Chong then explains, I originally planned to send S-rank monsters to the frontline battlefields. The A-rank monsters are struggling heavily and can no longer withstand the pressure. If this situation continues, the country will eventually be destroyed. He also reveals that General Liu has already ordered them to send new monsters to the battlefield to replace the fallen ones. But unfortunately, there are too few monsters available. Xie Chong continues, all I need from you is 5 S-rank monsters within 1 week, so I can train them before sending them directly to the battle. Feng becomes impressed and very excited. At this point, protecting the country becomes his responsibility. Well, he reassures Xie Chong, saying, don't worry. Within 1 week, I'll get you all the monsters. Feng immediately returns to his monster kingdom and decides to go deeper inside, because the monsters in the deeper regions are far higher in rank and much stronger than those at the surface. As he moves deeper, the system suddenly sends him a warning that the area he has entered contains extremely high-level monsters. Feng says, it doesn't matter. I've already become strong after obtaining Chu Xian. At that moment, Chu Xian starts making strange noises. Feng gets confused and asks what's wrong, but Chu Xian suddenly starts running around wild. Then Feng feels a sudden earthquake-like movement behind it. When he turns around, he sees a massive bull-like monster laughing as soon as it notices. It immediately charges toward him. The two collide with immense force. Feng activates his ability instantly, extending his hand toward the bull. A golden aura surrounds the creature, and its size rapidly shrinks. Feng says, perfect. Now it looks kind of cute. But the bull becomes depressed, having been separated from its herd. This time, Chu Xian approaches it and tries to comfort it, calming it down. Feng continues forward and searches for a mature monster. Soon, he finds a wind rabbit, a monster known for its incredible speed. He says, perfect, this is an adult monster. He tries to sneak up on it, but the rabbit notices him and instantly runs away at high speed. Feng jumps after it repeatedly, but cannot catch it. He gets frustrated as the rabbit keeps escaping effortlessly. Finally, Feng stops and uses a technique called space lock. The system immediately responds, saying he is using a high-level authority skill, and activation begins. The rabbit is instantly frozen in place, unable to move. Feng takes advantage of the situation, uses his power, and shrinks the rabbit's size, completing capture. The system informs him that he has reached his daily hunting limit. He leaves the kingdom and places the newly captured monsters on the shelves. Suddenly, the shop door is violently kicked open. Robin enters with 2 others and says, the 3 days are over. I'm here to destroy your shop, and I'm also here to settle my score with you for ruining my alliance with CF. Feng is reminded of the past, when he was expelled from his family and treated harshly. He responds coldly, get out of here before I break your legs. Robin smirks and says, where did this new confidence come from? One of his companions summons a terrifying wolf inside the shop, but Feng doesn't hesitate. He summons Chu Xian. The moment Chu Xian appears, it immediately leaps onto the wolf, grabs and climbs onto its back. It bites down fiercely while absorbing its energy until the wolf completely disappears. The wolf's owner collapses in shock, saying, impossible, that monkey, it's like a demon. The second companion trembles and says, is this possible? That strange creature just devoured an A-rank monster so easily. Robin grits his teeth and says, fine, this will be your end, Feng. He then summons a terrifying monster known as the 100-Leg Dragon. The moment it appears, the entire place shakes with a frightening. Feng calmly says, Chu Xian, don't hesitate, attack again. Chushuan's eyes shine, and it instantly leaps forward, slicing the dragon's head off and devouring its body piece by piece until it finishes everything. Shock spreads across Robin's face like lightning. He says, "It's clear now that Chushuan is definitely an S-rank." His companions immediately turn and run away in panic. Robin falls to his knees, lowering his head and begging Feng for forgiveness. Terrified and unwilling to die, Feng slowly raises his hand. Chushuan continues trying to calm down so the opponent doesn't die, and then Feng personally throws Robin and his group out of the shop. Chushuan keeps laughing, clearly enjoying the situation. Once Robin gets outside, he immediately flees with his subordinates. Feng thinks to himself, "Excellent, now I understand the true meaning of a beast tamer's power." He also becomes certain that after what just happened, Robin's family will not stay silent and will try to interfere sooner or later. At that moment, his thoughts are interrupted by Jiang, who says, "By the way, you..." Feng casually replies, "That's the bare minimum for me," and welcomes her into the shop. Jiang then says, "How about joining my team and representing my family in tamer competition?" She explains that this is the most important competition in the world, where the winner receives massive resources. She keeps insisting that they must win no matter what. After thinking for a moment, Feng agrees and says, "All right, I'll join your team." Time passes, and we move to the competition arena, where a huge crowd is gathered, cheering loud. Jiang takes Feng to their team room in the arena and explains, "A team consists of 4 members. Feng replies, "Okay, but we're only 2 right now." At that moment, a new member appears, Su, Jiang's friend. She greets Feng warmly and says, "Let's win this competition." Feng shakes her hand and confidently says, "The championship will be ours," but adds, "We're still missing 1 member." Su replies calmly, "Don't worry, the last one is Fan. He always likes to show up late." We then cut to Fan, who is laughing to himself, saying, "I'll be late on purpose, so Jiang realizes my importance." He imagines Jiang running toward him excitedly when he arrives. However, when he finally enters the room, he is shocked to see Jiang not even noticing his absence, and instead talking with Feng. Fan becomes extremely angry and thinks, "I won't allow any man to join this." He immediately turns to Feng and says, "Listen carefully. I'm going to test you right now. I don't trust you." Feng is confused and asks what he means. Fan summons his beast, a giant bear. Feng summons Chushuan as well and tells him to go easy. But Chushuan ignores the instruction and immediately charges. With a single touch, it forces the massive bear to its knees in pure terror. Fan is shocked and asks how this is possible. He cancels the bear's summoning and asks Feng what rank Chushuan is. Feng lies and says it's S rank, hiding the truth that it is actually SSS rank, so no one feels discouraged. Jiang then approaches Fan and says, "Don't be upset, but no matter what, you would have lost to Feng anyway." Fan becomes even more frustrated. He decides that he must take revenge on Feng later. He says, "Fine, I'll still participate in training. My beast can help you improve." Training begins. Fan's bear attacks, but Sue's snake moves extremely fast, wraps around it, and crushes it, making the bear cry out, and Fan becomes completely depressed and says, "I'm clearly the weakest one." Jiang tells him, "Calm down. If you ask Feng for help, he might be able to increase your strength as well." Fan replies, "I just need some time to think." Meanwhile, Jiang's brother Zichen is watching Feng from a distance through a window, clearly angry. He orders his guard, "Gather all information about Feng." The guard leaves immediately. Zichen thinks to himself, "I need to find out who this Feng is, the one who dared to help my sister and stand him." He decides he will not leave Feng alone. Time passes again. Feng leaves the training arena and says, "That's enough training for today." The girls say goodbye and agree to continue tomorrow. Feng walks home happily, whistling. But suddenly, when he enters a street, he is stopped by guards. Zichen appears in front of him and introduces himself. Feng calmly asks, "What do you want from me?" Zichen presses a finger against Feng's chest and says, "Leave Zhang's team immediately. I'll give you 3 million. A guard opens a suitcase full of money as an offer. Feng refuses without even thinking. Zichen gets angry and says, "Then I'll destroy you." All the guards summon their beasts at once to intimidate. Feng smiles and says, "Do whatever you want. I don't care." The guards attack. Feng extends his hand and activates a spell. A magic circle appears in front of him, releasing a devastating force that instantly knocks out all the beasts and sends the guards flying. Zichen becomes even more furious and says, "You'll regret this." But Feng ignores him completely and continues walking. He then decides, "I still need 3 more monsters to finish the request." He returns to his monster kingdom, opens the map, and heads toward a river area. He thinks, "Yesterday I saw a dragon, but now it's gone." He begins searching for traces. They continue tracking it, but suddenly a massive earthquake shakes the entire area. After that, that, the dragon appears in a terrifying form, staring directly at Fong. Fong laughs and says, "Good, you finally showed yourself." As usual, he extends his hand and releases his power to capture it, but the dragon tries to escape by burrowing underground to hide. Fong frowns and says, "Strange. I didn't expect it to do that." He starts searching again, and when he does, the dragon suddenly emerges once more, clearly acting defiant and aggressive. Chu Xian immediately leaps toward it. Fong becomes annoyed at the dragon behavior and says, "Looks like I need to figure out who the ruler of this place is." After that, he traps it inside a spatial bubble. The system congratulates him for capturing the dragon. The dragon's size rapidly shrinks, and Fong places it inside a cage. He then continues moving and soon finds another monster. He says, "Great, come here too." This time, the monster is a firebolt. Enraged, it charges at Fong while unleashing flames that burn and destroy every path. Fong is shocked and says, "I didn't expect it to be this terrifying." He immediately starts running, with Chu Xian beside him, while the boar chases. Fong looks genuinely frightened and is shouting while running, but the boar doesn't stop. However, Fong suddenly finds an opening. He turns around and places his palm on the boar's head. Using his skill, he forces it into submission, successfully capturing. The system congratulates Fong again for obtaining a new monster. He takes both captured monsters and says, "All right, one more tomorrow, and I'll finish Xie Chang's request." Meanwhile, we shift to Shia, who is standing with Xie Chang, handing him all the prepared monster data. Xie Chang looks at it and says, "Sorry, but I've already found better monsters." Shio is shocked and says, "How is that possible? There must be a mistake. There are no monsters stronger than what our family has in this entire city." Robin, as usual, agrees and says, "Exact. Our monsters are the best among A-rank monsters." Xie Chang replies calmly, "Your A-rank monsters are dying easily in the war. We won't be using them anymore. We're going to buy S-rank monsters instead." Shio becomes angry and says, "Then you'll regret this. No one will be able to provide you with S-rank monsters like Finn." She leaves with Robin. At that moment, Xie Chang starts thinking, wondering how many monsters Fong has already obtained, since everything now depends. Outside, Robin says angrily, "Xie Chang is completely ungrateful." Shio smiles and says, "Don't worry, soon he'll regret everything." She then arrives at a military facility and meets General Chun. She says, "I have bad news." Chin asks her to explain, and she pretends to cry, saying that Xie Chang refused to buy A-rank monsters despite the shortage, which will put the country in greater danger. Chun believes her and becomes angry, saying, "If we don't secure strong monsters soon, the battlefield will be in serious danger." He immediately heads to Xie Chang's office. He enters angrily and says, "Are you insane? Don't you see the massive shortage in frontline monsters?" Xie Chang calmly replied, "I know." Chun gets even more frustrated and says, "Then why are you refusing to buy new monsters? You're risking the lives of soldiers." Xie Chang replies, "I'm currently closing a very important deal. We will be getting S-rank monsters." Chun laughs in disbelief and says, "S-rank monsters? Those haven't appeared in decades. How is that possible?" At that moment, Bing interrupts and enters excited, saying, "It's ready." Bing just called and said the order is complete. Xie Chang immediately stands up, happy, and says, "Perfect. Let's go get the new monsters." Chun is still skeptical and believes Fong is a fraud, but he decides to go anyway to expose. At the same time, Fong is finishing preparing the monster boxes and placing them on the table. He says, "Finally, I completed the extraction mission." He assumes the system will reward him greatly for selling, along with a huge amount of money from Xie Chang. Soon, multiple vehicles arrive outside Feng's shop. Bing, Xie Chang, and Chun enter together. Feng greets them politely and extends his hand to Chun, but Chun refuses and says, "I don't shake hand with liars." Bing tells him to calm down, saying Chun has been in a bad mood lately. Xie Chang, meanwhile, looks at the monsters in awe and says, "These are exactly what I was looking for." He tells Feng, "You can choose 5 of them." Bing examines them closely, still unable to believe what she's seeing, and starts naming the legendary monsters one by one. Xie Chang then offers to buy all 6 monsters. Feng says, "No, I still need to sell this 6th one." He adds that Xie Chang can simply request the number he needs in advance, and Fo will provide. Xie Chang immediately pulls out his card and says, "I'll buy them at 10 times the price." But Chin stops him and says, "We must verify them first before any purchase." Xie Chang gets annoyed and tells Chun to treat Feng with respect. Chun looks at Feng carefully and says, "I still don't trust him. I feel like he's hiding something." Feng becomes slightly discouraged by the reaction, and Bing immediately notices his expression and becomes worried, because if this continues, Feng might refuse to deal with them. Bing steps in and says to Chun, "I'm an expert in monster evaluation, and I assure you that all the monsters in front of you are truly S-rank." Chun replies, "How am I supposed to believe any of you?" You're all acting ridiculous to me. He then points at one of the monsters and says, if there was even one S-rank monster, I might believe it, but you're claiming all 6 are S-rank. That's impossible. Bing responds, your reasoning is actually logical, but the truth is all 6 are S-rank. At that point, Chun completely loses his temper. He grabs Bing by the neck, knocks her down, and laughs, saying, I'm going to expose this boy's lies right. Feng immediately steps in, and Bing quickly stands up, apologizes, I'm sorry. I just can't convince Chun at all. Feng replies calmly, it's fine. Chun can verify it himself if he wants. Chun takes out a device and says, great, I'll make you all cry in front of him. He places the device near the bull-like monster first, but there is no reaction. Chun smirks and says, as I expect, these are just ordinary pets. The truth will be revealed now. But the moment he activates the device again, it suddenly reacts and confirms. S-rank detect. The true form of the bull is revealed. Chun freezes in shock and says, how can this monster actually be S-rank? Bing immediately says, now that you've confirmed it, you should apologize to Feng. But Chun refuses and says, that's only one monster. We still have 5 left to test. He repeats the test on the dragon, and once again, device confirms S-rank. Then he tests the rabbit and the fire boar as well, and each time the same result appears. With every test, Chun becomes more and more shaky. His hands start trembling, and eventually the device falls from his grasp. He keeps repeating, impossible, this can't be real. Xiechong finally steps in and says, enough of this chaos. It's time for you to apologize to Feng. Bing also adds, you should understand now that Feng is the future of this country. Everyone should respect. Chun, however, refuses out of pride. He insists, no, I will prove this device is wrong. In a fit of arrogance, he breaks the bull's cage and summons his own beast, a massive leopard. He decides to force a battle between his leopard and the bull, trying to prove that Feng's monsters. At that moment, Chin's leopard charged at the bull, trying to attack it. But the bull suddenly revealed its true, enormous form, slammed the ground, and said, how dare you do that? The bull hadn't even been paying any real attention to the leopard. Instead, it headed straight toward Chun himself. Chun was terrified and immediately shouted for Feng to stop the bull. Feng quickly calmed things down and said, that's enough, bull. Go back. The bull obeyed at once, returning to its gentle form, then walked over to Feng and started licking his hand affectionately. Chun couldn't comprehend what he was seeing. How could such a terrifying beast like the bull be so submissive to Feng? He immediately apologized and said, I'm sorry, but it's been many years since any S-rank beast has appeared, and you have several. That's why I was suspicious. Feng lifted his head and replied, it doesn't matter. The important thing is that you don't repeat this again. With that, the deal went through successfully. Not only that, but Chang asked Chin to prepare 5 more beasts. When everything was finished, the system rewarded Feng with a large amount of resources, and he also gained a new skill called the Indestructible Legend. Feng was delighted, knowing that only a little progress remained before he could evolve Tushan into its adult. After that, Feng went out with Chang. When Shu found out about what had happened, she was extremely shocked that Chun and Chang were treating Feng so well. She cursed him, saying, that despicable boy is stealing our family's business. We won't let this pass. She got in her car and went to Chang, saying angrily, you've taken away all of our customers by purchasing beasts from someone like Feng. Chang replied, the beasts from your family can't even compare to the beasts Feng provides. Shu grew even more furious and said, that brat is obviously deceiving you. Those beasts must be fake. Chang thought for a moment and said, Feng's family is really foolish. They have a treasure like him in their family, yet none of them appreciate it at all. In the end, he told Shu not to come to the research institute again under any circumstance. Shu was enraged by this and went straight to Chun, demanding that he intervene immediately because Feng had managed to deceive Chang. Chun snapped at her, how dare you show up in front of me after causing me such embarrassment in front of Miss Feng. He then informed her that from now on, the army would no longer purchase goods from her family. In the end, Chun and Chang left together. As they walked away, Shu lost her temper at Feng, shouted, how dare you steal the family's business? Feng calmly replied, it sounds like there are dogs here barking. Then he went inside and shut the door. Shu asked Ru, what did Feng mean by that? Ru answered, he meant you're just talking nonsense. That only made Shu even angry. She said, fine, this isn't over yet. She immediately got in her car and decided to go to the sales office to report Feng for a illegal trading operation. She arrived at the office, went upstairs, and found someone named Zishan. She asked if his father was available. Zishan said, just tell me what you need, and I'll handle it. Shu told him, that boy Feng is running a bee-selling shop illegal, and it needs to be shut down immediately. Zishan laughed and said, wait, are you talking about Feng? What a strange coincidence. Shu asked, what's your relationship with him? Zishan replied, not a good one at all. He reassured her that he would completely shut down Feng's shop. shop. Without wasting any time, he went to Feng with two others. When Feng saw him, he was surprised and asked about the reason for his visit. Zishan said, "I've received a report that your shop is operating illegally and must be shut down immediately. Also, you'll be coming with me for questioning." Feng immediately brought out his documents, permits, and said, "Everything here is completely legal." But Zishan insisted, saying, "As long as I've declared this shop, then it is illegal." Feng replied, "Are you here to cause trouble or what?" Zishan laughed and said, "Exactly. And for your information, I'm an investigator. No one can do anything." Without any further discussion, Feng suddenly punched him in the face. Zishan screamed in pain and shouted, "How dare you hit me?" Feng replied coldly, "Just so you know, I can do whatever I want to." Zishan shouted back, "You're obstructing law enforcement. This shop will be shut down by force right now." The guards immediately stepped forward to use their power and close the place. Feng said calmly, "I don't care. Let's see what you can do." Zishan flew into a rage, smashed the table, and said, "No one will be able to save you now." At that moment, Jiang arrived, entered the shop, and said, "What do you think you're doing?" Zishan replied, "Perfect timing. You're here. Come take all of them." Jiang took Feng's side and said, "Everything here is perfectly legal, and you're the one obstructing law enforcement." Jiang quickly realized that the situation had escalated into a serious investigation. Meanwhile, Zishan repeated his claim that no one would be able to save Feng. At the same time, the scene shifted to the front lines of the battle where chaos had broken out. Beasts were storming the camp, even leaping onto the general's tent and killing soldiers one after another. One soldier shouted, "The camp has been completely breached." The general sat frozen in shock, muttering, "Is this the end?" But suddenly, Chang arrived, accompanied by the bull. Feng released it, and the bull let out a terrifying roar, so frightening that the surrounding beasts fled in panic. Chen also arrived, leaping forward toward the general and saying, "Am I late?" The general was stunned when he saw the bull and said, "This beast looks like a fully matured S-rank monster." He then asked where Chen had obtained it. Chen replied that it came from Feng's specialized shop. The general became extremely excited, grabbed his radio, and issued orders that Feng's shop was to remain under the protection of the army. We then returned to Feng's shop, which had already been shut down by Zishan. People had gathered outside, saying the shop was closed because it sold low-quality beasts. At that moment, Ru was pleased and said to Shu, "You turn out to be very clever. You handled all of this with a simple trick." Shu laughed and said, "I almost feel sorry for that boy Feng. First, he was expelled from his family, and now his shop has been shut down just because he opposed them." On the other side, Jiang was furious, saying that what was happening was a great injustice. But Feng simply smiled. Zishan said to him, "Go ahead and laugh all you want. You'll regret it once we take you to the investigation office." Feng replied calmly, "That's fine. Let's see which one of us ends up regretting." Suddenly, as they were speaking, a government vehicle arrived. A very important-looking man stepped out and asked about the commotion. This man was Mr. G. When someone informed him that Feng's shop had been shut down, he became extremely angry upon learning that Zishan's response. He said, "That boy has gone too far. He's now gotten involved with the shop under military protection." He immediately moved to fix the situation, hoping it hadn't escalated beyond repair. At that moment, Zishan saw Mr. G, who, incidentally, was his father, asked, "What brings you here?" Mr. G rushed toward him and struck him hard across the face, then continued scolding him harshly, saying, "You've really gone too far this time." Zishan was shocked, holding his face, and said, "What happened? I didn't do anything wrong." Mr. G kicked him hard in the stomach, sending him flying, and said, "You're opposing the army's main supplier." Zishan grew anxious, thought to himself, "But Shu told me this shop only sells worthless beasts." Mr. G slapped him again and said, "Shut up. These are official army documents." Zishan was stunned. "I didn't know any of this," he said, lowering his head in shame. Mr. G then turned to Feng, bowed deeply, and apologized, saying compensation would be arranged. He then told his son, "What are you waiting for?" Apologized Feng immediately. Zishan stepped forward, lowered his head, and apologized, saying, "Your family is at fault. They were the ones who filed the report, and I came because of it." Feng replied, "My family has always been like that. They love to stir up trouble." When Ru heard this, he cursed Zishan for dragging them into the situation. At that moment, Shu remained completely calm, fixing her makeup as she said, "Since the usual methods aren't working, I'll have to use special methods." Ru asked, "What do you mean?" Shu replied coldly, "Everything will return to normal once Feng's dead." Immediately, she contacted a group called the Abyss Feeders and said, "I want an S-rank beast right now." The person on the other end replied, "The price will be 500 million. Shu was slightly surprised by the cost, but said, "That's fine. I also want you to kill someone." "Who?" they asked. Feng, the owner of the shop. Time passed, and the scene shifted to the training room. Su was annoyed, saying that Fan was always late. Jiang said, "Let's just start training without it." Feng agreed, and they began immediately. We then saw Feng's two Tushan strike a cat-like beast, sending it flying before standing over. Then it moved on to a snake, beating it as if it were nothing more than a toy in its. Everyone was shocked by Tushan's strength. Su said, "Your beast is truly amazing." Jiang added, "Feng will be the team's trump card." Feng laughed awkwardly, clearly embarrassed by the praise. At that moment, Fan entered while eating and said, "No, I'll be the team's trump card." Jiang replied, "You look exhausted. You're talking nonsense." But Fan, full of enthusiasm, said, "No, my father is going to get me the strongest S-rank beast. Once I have it, I'll even be able to defeat Feng himself." Feng placed a hand on his head and said, "You've got big ambitions. Just make sure you choose your opponents wisely. Otherwise, you might regret it." Angrily, Fan replied, "Remember those words. Tomorrow, I'll make you take them back." As time passed, it was revealed that Fan was actually Chen's son. Chen said to him, "We're going now to buy the beast you want, but you must treat Mr. Feng, the shop owner, with respect." Fan assured him he would. But when they entered the shop, Fan was shocked and said, "Feng, what are you doing here?" Feng himself was surprised to learn that Fan was Chen's son. But Fan tried to provoke him, saying, "Fine, just stand there and watch how powerful my new beast will." The moment he said that, Chen struck his son hard and said, "How dare you speak to Mr. Feng like that? Apologize immediately." Fan was confused and said, "How was this Feng the same Feng you were talking about?" He then remembered the threat he had made to Feng earlier in the training room, and embarrassment spread across his face. "I can't believe this," Feng said calmly. "Relax. Don't be nervous. We're teammates. It's not right for you to put yourself down like that." Fan thanked him for his understanding and began apologizing. Chen also apologized for his son's behavior. Then Chen took out his card and said, "I want you to give him the rabbit." Feng nodded, prepared the machine, and completed the transaction. Once the purchase was done, Fan sat in front of the rabbit to form a contract, and he reached out, touched. The moment Fan touched the rabbit, a golden beam of light shot out and enveloped the body. Fan exclaimed in shock, "Impossible. I can feel my entire body and strength being completely reshaped." He was overjoyed. He had now become an S-rank beast tamer. He was also surprised to discover that the rabbit wasn't a young beast at all, but a fully mature one. Feng smiled and said, "Congratulations." Since he had completed another sale, the system rewarded him with 10,000 resources. That meant he only needed 3,000 more for Tushan to reach maturity as well. At the same time, outside the shop, a mysterious man stood holding a picture of Feng, carefully observing the store. He muttered, "According to the information I received, Feng has an immature S-rank beast." He smirked and summoned his demonic dog, saying, "Mine is an A+ rank fully mature beast. It should have no trouble defeating Feng, since his is still young." Immediately, the demonic dog leapt forward, smashed through the glass, and stormed into the shop, terrifying all the beasts inside. Chen instantly recognized and said, "That dog and its master are criminals wanted by the authorities." The assassin spoke coldly, "My target here is Feng. It would be best if the rest of you run. I'll kill anyone who stays." The dog prepared to attack, but suddenly the rabbit leapt onto the table. Fan stepped forward and said, "Leave this criminal to me." The assassin laughed, mocking, and said, "It seems you don't know. My demonic dog is the natural predator of your rabbit." The dog eagerly flexed its claws, ready to devour the rabbit. Fan immediately ordered, "Don't wait, attack." The rabbit moved at incredible speed, striking the dog and sending it flying. The assassin was shocked. How is it this fast? Before he could react, the rabbit continued its assault, striking the dog again and again. When it finally stopped, the dog lay on the ground, completely unable to move. Fan grinned and said, "Now you see the true power S-rank beasts." The assassin was stunned. How could a predator be defeated by its prey? Fan then gave another command, "Capture him." The assassin scoffed, "Impossible. I'm a top-level wanted criminal. You won't catch me that easily." He quickly injected something into his dog. Instantly, the dog's eyes turned red, its body grew larger, and its strength surged beyond. The assassin laughed again. "Go, destroy everything in your path." The dog glared menacing, and the entire place trembled from its overwhelming aura. Feng frowned and asked, "What just happened?" Chen explained, "That's a madness serum. It drastically boosts a beast's power for a short time, but it's banned because of the severe damage it causes after." Feng cursed under his breath. People like him don't deserve to be called beast tamers. Fan, equally enraged, said, "I'll teach him a harsh lesson." He ordered the rabbit to unleash its wind aura. At the same time, the dog charged forward under the assassin's command. A violent, earth-shaking clash erupted between the two beasts, but in the end, the dog was the one sent flying, crashing down defeated right in front of its master. The assassin was on the verge of losing his mind. That rabbit, it's not a young beast at all. It must be fully mature. Sweat began pouring down his face as panic set in. He turned and ran. Fan shouted, "You're not getting away," and ordered the rabbit to capture him. The rabbit dashed forward, struck the assassin, and knocked him to the ground effortlessly. Shin walked over and said, "The bounty for capturing him, 10 million. He decided to take the man with him to claim the reward, then left with his son. Once everyone had gone, Feng decided to enter his beast realm to do some hunting. He thought to himself, "After what I saw today, I'm certain mature beasts are far stronger than." He reassured Tushan that he wouldn't leave it behind and would help it mature as soon as possible. Tushan was delighted, but suddenly the ground beneath Feng cracked open and turned into a swamp, pulling both of them down. Tushan began sinking into the mire. Then a strange fish appeared, leaping through the air. Wherever it landed, the ground transformed into swamp. Feng's eyes widened. "Impossible! That's a demonic manta fish. It can turn the surrounding area into a spiritual swamp to trap and kill its prey." Despite its difficult, Feng was excited. This is a treasure. Chan will be amazed when he sees it. Tushan released its energy and moved across the swamp, while Feng kept jumping to avoid sinking as he chased fish. Soon, he realized how dangerous the situation was. If this keeps up, it might actually kill him. So he used his spatial barrier ability and successfully trapped the fish. Laughing, he said, "Looks like I succeeded." But his joy didn't last. A long tongue suddenly shot out, wrapped around the fish, and yanked it away. Feng was shocked. When he looked up, he saw the culprit, a giant ash crocodile. The creature swallowed the fish whole and began to flee. Feng didn't hesitate. He gave the order, "Tushan, grab its tail now." Tushan obeyed instantly, clamping onto the crocodile and pulling it back with all its strength, while the beast struggled to escape. Seizing the opportunity, Feng rushed forward, reached the crocodile, placed his hand on its head. Just like that, the hunt succeeded. The crocodile shrank in size, and Feng captured it along with the fish, saying, "Luckily, the fish wasn't seriously harmed." The system appeared and announced, "Congratulations. You successfully captured remarkable beasts." Feng then exited the beast realm. Outside, he noticed news broadcasting an important announcement. The Beast Tamers competition would officially begin the next day. There were also reports about the appearance of a mysterious beast in the tournament. Feng grew excited and said, "Now I'm really curious to see what this mysterious beast is." Meanwhile, elsewhere, we see Ruby approaching Shu and saying, "Unfortunately, the assassination attempt on Feng has failed." He reassures him, telling him not to worry, that he has a highly profitable plan already prepared and placed on the table in front of him. At that moment, Ro notices a box in front of her, opens it, and is shocked to find an ice insect. It immediately freezes the entire area around it, even frosting over Ro's hair and face. He looks at her in disbelief and says, "No way. That creature is a fully matured beast of S rank." Shio stands up and tells him, "I want you to form a contract with this beast right now, participate in the tamer competition, and kill Feng immediately." The process begins as the insect emits a beam of energy that enters Ro's body. He feels the power of ice coursing through him, starts laughing, and says, "I can feel an immense power now. Finally, I'm getting close to my goal." The moment to destroy Feng is very near. Time passes until the next day, and the competition begins. We see fierce battles taking place, and the crowd is cheering with great enthusiasm. Ro is present as well, seated in the VIP section, saying, "These fights are so boring. There's nothing exciting about them." But inwardly, he's distracted, unable to get out of his head the image of Feng losing, begging for mercy just to stay alive. At the same time, Feng is also there. He slightly moves his head, and his gaze meets Ro's. The two lock eyes, each filled with challenge. Jiang interrupts and tells Feng, "I have a feeling that Ro is going to be dangerous." Feng releases his aura slightly and focuses, trying to sense something. He then says, "It's clear that Ro's aura now indicates he has also become an S-rank tamer." Jiang is shocked and asks, "But how did he manage to obtain an S-rank beast?" Feng replies, "His family has many connections. They must have found a way to acquire it." He then asks her about the competition system, since he's unfamiliar with it. Jiang explains, "There are 400 participating teams and 4 battle arenas. Every 100 teams compete in one arena. On the first day, there are eliminations until only 10 teams remain from each group. Then, on the second day, they compete again in the final." Feng begins to think and wonders whether fate will bring him face to face with Ro in the final. Jiang tells him which arena Ro is assigned, and he realizes that Ro is in the 3rd arena while they are in the second. Feng sighs and says, "What a shame. I'll have to wait until the finals to destroy that kid." As time passes, we see Ro standing there with a terrifying aura, saying, "I don't want Feng to lose, just so I can kill him in the finals." At that moment, the announcer speaks, congratulating the Che family team for achieving 3 consecutive victories, and then asks the crowd to welcome the Lin family, which includes Ro. Ro immediately moves and enters the arena, laughing as he says, finally, the time has come for me to shine before everyone. He even wishes death upon everyone around. He steps forward alone to face the entire opposing team. The members of the other team are puzzled and say, it looks like the Lin family only has one strong team. With arrogance, Ro gestures to them and says, come to me all at once. I alone am more than enough to destroy all of you. He then summons his ice spirit insect and declares, this is my moment to steal the spotlight. On the other side, the opposing team summons their beasts and moves together in a coordinated formation as they launch their attack. Ro shouts and orders the insect to strike. It releases ice that freezes all the beasts within seconds. The ice then shatters, and the beasts are completely destroyed. The opposing team members scream in shock and immediately choose to surrender rather than die. The spectators are equally stunned, unable to believe what they've just seen. Some say that insect is a fully matured S-rank spirit-type beast. Others add, it's been a long time since we've seen any S-rank beast at all. Ro declares to them, from this moment on, consider me the champion of this competition. He even takes the opportunity to advertise, telling the crowd, you should all buy from my family. As you can see, our beasts are this powerful, and you can have the same. Phone comments, in reality, after what we've just seen, that insect is indeed powerful, and it hasn't even revealed its full strength. Soon after, it's time for Feng's team to fight. Jiang asks Feng to move, and they enter the arena. The opposing team mocks Jiang's team, saying, every year, we crush your team. Their leader even tells her to withdraw, warning that her brother won't be able to bear watching her get beaten. On the other side, the audience recognizes the opposing team, Team Hawk, one of the strongest teams and a major contender to win the entire competition. Jiang begins to cry because of the harsh words and wonders why people look at her that way. She repeats to herself that she must win the competition. Members of Team Hawk continue mocking her, saying, you're already crying out of fear before the fight even starts. At that point, Jiang reaches her limit and charges forward with her cat, whose size begins to grow. Feng observes the scene and says, the opposing team has 4 fully matured A+ rank beasts. He informs his teammates that Jiang's attack alone won't be enough and orders them to move as well. He summons Chou Yan, releasing a powerful beam during the summoning, which excites the crowd. Then he summons Aaron, and after that, Sok summons Tanban. The 3 beasts move forward to engage in battle, just as Team Hawk begins summoning their own beasts. We notice that the opposing team's fully matured beasts have incredibly powerful appearance. The spectators, upon seeing Feng's team's beasts, begin mocking them, saying, these beasts look like trash. How could they even participate with them first place? Practically everyone expects Feng's team to be the weakest in the entire competition. In that moment, the beasts charge at each other chaotically, each one striking with maximum force. A massive explosion erupts in the arena. The audience is shocked that Feng's team hasn't already lost instantly, and arguments start breaking out in the stands, because Feng's team's beasts are actually outperforming the opposing. Even the opposing team's leader is surprised, questioning the level of Feng's beasts and how they are able to intimidate A+ rank creatures. He then says to his teammates, that's enough, it doesn't matter anymore. We'll switch to our second formation for group combat. At that moment, a white chain appears, circling around his team's beasts and gathering them together. Feng becomes concerned because Team Hawk is highly experienced in coordinated group combat, and something like this will make things much more difficult. A powerful white beam then emerges in the arena, and we see the strength of Team Hawk's beasts increase even further as they move in their formidable formation. Feng doesn't waste a single moment thinking. He immediately begins assigning roles within his team, giving each member a specific opponent to focus on. Then, without hesitation, all the beasts surge forward at once, launching fierce and relentless attacks against each other.